We are here with a special episode of This Is Fútbol. We have one of the most, I would say, probably the biggest gentleman to ever play for the U.S. men's national team on our show today. Charlie Davies, welcome.
Thank
We're
you.
so glad to have you on the show today, gentlemen. Because I say that only because I've read a lot about your life story, and we'll be glad to talk about it a little bit today. But absolutely, you are a true gentleman and are a great representation of what U.S. soccer should be. So that comes from me, from the heart. So you're definitely somebody that I look up to.
Thank you. Really appreciate it. It's been a long journey to get to this point. So I'm excited to be on the show. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Want to get started? Just first of all, just say hi. How's it going? And kind of just give us a background of what have you been what's been going on in your life over the last couple of years. We know you were on the CBS Golazo show. Now you're on the new morning show, which is with one of our good friends, Nico Cantor. So tell us a little bit about that and what's been going on.
Well, the Golazo Network has been incredible at CBS, Paramount Plus, and they wanted to put together a morning football show dedicated to the world's game. We cover every league, all the storylines, and it's so exciting for me to wake up every morning because I got to get up at around 4:15, 4:30 every morning, head to the studio to be there by 5. And, we get to talk about storylines and how do we continue to grow the game in this country, and how do we expose people to different leagues and different players and have them really understand the world's game. So that's been so exciting for me, along with being a part of the Golazo show, and you have Europa League. There could be 18 games, 16 games going on. There's goals all over the place, and you're forced to know each team and their players. And I love learning. Who doesn't love learning, right? So I get to see the up and coming rising stars of world football, but I also get to learn a lot about the different leagues and clubs, which just overall makes you a better analyst. And then I get to raise my twin boys, who are 7 years old. I coach them on the weekends, and they love the game, and it's just being a good father and a role model. So that's basically my life, and then being a good husband. My wife is doing all the work while I'm gone. So that's been my life story. So for me, I think my life is always go, do. And I thrive off of that chaos.
Nice. Talking about that, how is it to adapt from being a professional footballer? Because we see that often. Well, not so many cases, but it usually happens that professional footballers then they take the road to work on media. How is that, the adapting into that?
I would say every player has a different situation. And every player, is either ready for that next chapter or they're scared of that next chapter. And I think you're based on your career, the ups and downs. And in some cases, the downs prepare you for what's next, because you're forced to think about life after football. And some players who are at the top of their game for most of their career, they never have to think about what's next. And so when the end comes and smacks them in the face, all of a sudden you're forced to start thinking about, well, what do I do now? What's going to bring me happiness and joy? And so I think in media, there are so few positions available, and players, as nice as it sounds to just walk into a media position, they're really not out there for you to walk into. And on top of that, the work that goes into it, you have to realize as a professional, it's great that you had that experience and no one can take that from you. But then you have to leave that ego at the door, check it, and redevelop yourself. Know that you're not coming in to the media landscape as you were as a player. It doesn't work that way. You have to earn that respect as a journalist, as an analyst, as a pundit, and you have to put in that hard work and make sure that you're treating everyone well. Because that's the only way that you're going to get these opportunities is if you're a player, did you treat people well? And if that's the case, then people want to work with you and they want to help you and they want to get you opportunities. If you're not, then guess what? Those opportunities aren't going to come. And then there's also the pathway to just becoming a coach, because people think that's the natural progression. I'm so used to being, I don't want to leave it. I want to stay in the locker room. I want to coach. And that's also a hard reality for a lot of players, because you go to the academy and you might have to start with the 14s or 15s or 16s. And work your way up that way. And that's not glorious. That's a lot of hours that you're spending on the pitch coaching kids, and then you're watching film, and before you know it, you realize, whoa, as a professional footballer, I was supposed to be at the training facility at 8:30. Now I got to be there 7 before everyone else, and I got to leave after everyone else around 6 or 7 every single day. And sometimes you're also working weekends, because that's when the matches are. So you realize, whoa, this is way more work than I wanted. I'm doing more work than I did as a player. I think that's the challenges for a lot of former professionals. In my case, I had a couple of situations that kind of knock you off kilter and force you to kind of reevaluate life. And I think most importantly, the time where I had my car accident in 2009, but just before a World Cup, where I was on top of the world, and I felt, I was on the verge of trying to do something special with the U.S. team in that 2010 Cup. And so you nearly lose your life. You're forced to look at things a lot differently. And I knew when I get a second chance at life to make the most of every single day. And I think that's why I move the way I do now and try and do as much as I possibly can every single day, because I know how fast life can change and how fast it can go. So every day I'm trying to do as much as I can and suck up, because I want those experiences, because I know how fast the day can just be gone. Right. And so,
right.
I as much as I wanted to get back on the pitch and work hard, I knew things come to an end. And I always wanted to treat people with respect. I wanted to make sure that I was always staying positive and giving that energy off in a great way. And so when the time did come, I had people who were helping me in that transition. Hey, here's a front office role. And here's a way to get into media. And so I was going down 2 paths of being in the front office, because maybe being a technical director, sporting director was my path, or being a media presence in the media, being a pundit, being a journalist. And so I went down those 2 paths, and I loved it. And I loved both, and I made the most of both, but ended up choosing the TV route, just because I think right at the moment, I feel that's where I can have the biggest impact in our sport and in our country. So that was the longest answer I could give to that question.
It was great. It was great. No, and you touched on a lot of important topics there. One being, yourself getting into the media. I mean, you can see myself, Nico and myself. I mean, we're ex-footballers. We didn't make it professionally, but we're trying to do somewhat, similar to what you do. We're trying to, have our own show and just spread the game around as much as we can. And like you said, on the morning show, you guys talk about all sorts of football. That's what we try to do on This Is Fútbol. We don't focus on just the MLS. We try to take, look at all the leagues. So, my question really in that, since you hit on that, is what can what advice can you give somebody who, wasn't a professional footballer, or who didn't go the route of being a journalist, getting a journalism degree or something like that, who's trying to maybe get to where, a Charlie Davies or a Nico Cantor or, a Thierry Henry or somewhere is at in that level? Because it is, like you said, there are very little positions available. What's the advice you can give somebody that's trying to get there?
Well, first I would say there are certain people, Thierry Henry, for instance, Gary Neville, Jamie Carragher, who no matter what, because they played at such a high level and had so many experiences, and their contact list is crazy, like it's going to be almost damn near impossible to ever get to that level. But the way that you do aspire to get to that level is by hard work. And the way that you would figure out avenues to get there and simply a blueprint to getting there is watching as many games as possible. And what I would do is I'm watching a game and I'm taking notes of words that are being used that I typically wouldn't use, of analysis of a way a player moves or turns, and taking those sentences and those words and adding it to my repertoire, because that only allows you to help people understand a certain way of viewing the game. I'm watching all the shows, pregame, halftime, postgame, taking notes from everyone, whoever is considered the best. I'm watching them, and I'm watching their rivals, because that's the only way to get better, is by just consuming as much as you can, but studying as you do it. The hard work, just like in the sport, there are some players with supreme talent, and there's some that don't have quite as much as talent, but they get there with hard work. So you have to outwork everyone else in the business, just like you have to do it in school. That's what, just like you have to do it on the pitch. You have to actually work harder than everyone else. And when people are sleeping, you're watching, you're working hard. That's how you get it. That's how you get there. And that at the same time, try and be positive with your analysis and the things that you're saying, because you might get a few clicks by being negative, but at the end of the day, no one's going to want to talk to you. No one's not going to want to share things with you. So be as honest as you can, and it's okay to be critical, but try and do it in a positive way. And I think that's the route that I would suggest anyone who is looking to make a name for themselves in media.
Nice. Awesome. Yeah, that's an awesome answer, and we thank you for sharing. Not only that, but also your experiences when it comes to that. I want to take you to the football pitch, because I want to talk a little bit about that. You went through the ranks in the States, and over the last few years, we've seen that soccer has grown in the States. It's boomed out, right? What can you say that's different from when you went up through the ranks as to how it is now? Especially considering that you just told us that you have two sons that they play soccer as well, and you can see it yourself.
Well, one, I'd say there's many more opportunities to go to play at a higher level and to be developed. There's academies that didn't exist when I was growing up. There's academies. There's the coaching has gotten tremendously better. Has really improved since I was a kid. So I think my boys are extremely fortunate that they have me as their father, who can help them at home and doing the simple things, just getting technique right. What I've noticed coaching kids is there are a lot of kids out there who are playing, especially in the early ages, whether, from 5 to 8 years old. Coaches will throw out a ball and say kick or pass or shoot, but they don't break it down for them and show them how to kick and what part of their foot to use. And they throw out a ball and they'll say play 1v1 and just try and pass, but they don't say this is how you move and this is why you move a player this way. And you're playing 1v1, you dribble up, you're moving up a defender out of the space you want to go to. So breaking that down for kids that I'm coaching a lot of 7 and 8 year olds. I love it. It brings me so much joy to see kids learn the game and grow from it, because they can take it on. Give them the technique, give them the skills, and they will thrive. So it could be as simple as showing kids how to control the ball and what part of their foot to use. And playing barefoot was the best thing my father taught me at a young age, to help me understand exactly the parts of your foot you're supposed to use when you turn, when you roll somebody, when you're dribbling, when you're shooting, when you're taking the ball out of the air. Those things really go a long way of just getting the foundation right for these kids. So I think you have more opportunities to go overseas as well, because the American player is now much more respected in the world landscape. So it's an exciting time, especially with the World Cup coming in 2026. There's more eyes on the American player. There's more interest in coming to America to develop players because you have so many players and so many athletic players because you play so many different sports. And because you can play so many sports in this country, you're able to develop other skills and traits that you typically wouldn't get if you're a professional footballer in different countries. So you develop hand-eye coordination. You're seeing that because of basketball, football, baseball. Those other sports here allow you to, I think, develop quicker and in a more an efficient way than you would if you only played soccer. So I don't think you need to specialize in such a young age. I think that's a misconception that parents say, oh, if my son or daughter is going to be a professional football player, they have to be only playing football by 8, 9, 10. And I don't think that's the case. You can wait until, 8th grade. When you're 11, 12, I think that's when you start to make the move. But if they're playing multiple sports up until that point, you're only going to develop into becoming a more well-rounded professional or footballer at that age, because you take on so many different traits, because naturally young kids, they're sponges. So they're taking in all the different information, all the different sensory that you have with other sports, and the mental toughness, and, individual sports to team sports, and, hand sports to football. So it's something that I think doesn't get talked about enough for the youth in this country. Let them have fun so they also don't get burned out. You want to keep it fun and give them a break, even if they play football in 2 of the 3 seasons, or if you do fall, winter, spring, they do fall, spring, football, winter. Let them do something else to get their mind off. But that sport could also help them become a better footballer. If I didn't wrestle in high school, I went 14 to 18. I wrestled. That was what took me to the top. If I did not wrestle, I would not be the same football player.
I was actually going to bring that up. It was due to wrestling that you developed your strength and your physique, right? Because before that, they were telling you that you were too small, too weak, right?
Yes. They were telling me I wasn't strong enough on the ball. And once I wrestled and I understood balance and being able to use your force and your strength in certain situations, and just the mental toughness, I felt I was unstoppable on the pitch. That was so key to my development, and it also gave me a little break from the typical runs and shooting and dribbling. Now I could, grow in a different way, and I think that was so instrumental in my growth and my development. So I would stress that to the day I die. Let your kids play other sports. Sure, the long-term goal is becoming a professional footballer, and that's great. But the break is the mental break too for a kid is massive, and allows them to develop different skills. So that would be from my experience, the best route for kids.
That's great. It's great. Yeah. So one thing you mentioned is mental toughness. And that's something that's really been being talked about, is basically the mental aspect of the game, and really in kids more and more over the years. The more the years pass, the more, mental awareness and all that is being talked about. Can you talk a little bit about your mental toughness? Obviously, you went through your accident. You went through other things as well, as, being told you were too small to play soccer. These are all different, times in your life where you're hit with something, and, you got to work on your mental toughness, your mental health to get you through it. Can you talk a little bit about that and what got you through those tough points in life?
It started when I was young, 2nd grade. So I was about 7 years old, and my mother had her first mental breakdown. And so she was checked into a psychiatric hospital. My father had a drug addiction at the same time, which I think pushed my mother to have that mental breakdown. At a young age, I was forced to be the leader of my household. I had a younger brother, 2 years younger than me, and I had to be responsible for him. I felt like I had to be responsible for our happiness, for our joy in life. And a lot of the times it was being outside and just playing sports, just feeling like a kid and not having to deal with what was happening inside of our apartment. So when you have that as a kid, I think that really set me up to just be a doer and be driven to succeed. And I wanted to be successful for my family. I felt that it was on me to support my family, and it was on me to get out and make something of myself and become a professional athlete, because those were all my role models. My role models were the people I couldn't talk to, I couldn't see every day. I saw them on TV. That's what I wanted to be. And I strive to be a professional athlete because, man, that's the life. That was the life. And I wanted it. And I was going to do whatever it took. And I wanted to be outside. I trained. I enjoyed the hard work part of it because I could see the benefits. And I knew I was getting closer to my goal. Then another major setback was in college. I had a meniscus tear, which was in the first game of the season. It caused me to be out for 5 months at no weight bearing. That was difficult. The thought of not, being as quick or fast and not be able to become a professional, that creeps into your mind. I just had to stick to the process and rehab. And finally I got a spring game that year and I scored a brace against the Revolution. So I felt, okay, I'm okay. I can still become a professional footballer. And the next year I finally got my opportunity to go. I went on trial to Ajax at first because I said, I believe in myself. I'm going to trial at Ajax instead of taking a guaranteed contract with Major League Soccer. I wanted to play in Europe. I wanted to be with the best. I knew that if I was going to maximize my potential, I had to be in Europe. That was my dream. I wanted to play Champions League. I wanted to be with the best. And I knew I had that in me, but I had to go out there and try. And unfortunately, the trial was going pretty well. And the last game, with all the executives watching at Ajax, I pulled my hamstring maybe 5 minutes or 10 minutes into the game. I didn't play well. I tried to stay on. And they're like, we can't sign you right now, but we can give you more time. And for me, I just thought I can't go with this unknown for too long. And I thank God every day Hammarby came in with a contract and said, we don't need to have you trial. Here's your contract, sign it. We have a future for you. I flew to Stockholm, sat down with the manager, Tony Gustafsson, who is actually the head manager for the Australian women's national team. And they're hosting the World Cup this summer, which should be awesome. But he sat down with me and said, here's the plan. I see a big future for you and I'm going to help you get there. I trust in you. And so that's all you need to hear as a young player. I'm going to play in a top division in Europe, in Sweden, which is a feeder league in the Allsvenskan. And I have a coach who believes in me. So he pushed me. And then the ultimate setback that I had would be the car accident I was involved in 2009. I was in the back seat. The car flipped and cut in half on the GW Parkway. I was airlifted to the hospital. The passenger lost her life. And I had to rebuild myself. I literally forgot how to walk, let alone how to play football. I couldn't do some of the moves that I've done since I started playing the game. My go-to move, my inside-outside, I never got it back. Never. So you had to relearn the game in a lot of ways and change the way I played to have success. I could not rely on my quickness and my burst of speed and my change of pace. I had to I still had a little pace, but it was not the same. I was not the same player. So you're forced to adjust and make the most of life. So I realized I also had a skill, and that was trying to inspire other people, because as low as you may feel in the adversity that you may face, it's never as bad as you think. You can always get through it. You can always come out the other side. And so I had that as well as just get on the field and giving it my all, out 100% every single day. And let me try and inspire my teammates. And I felt that when I was on the field, players were feeding off that energy. Like, look at this guy. He's got an inch and a half. His leg is short, an inch and a half. He's out here hobbling and wobbling all over the place. It takes him 4 days to recover from one match, where I could probably play 2 matches in the same day before my car accident. And how could we complain? And so that's the way I carried myself. And then life wasn't done with me. They said, actually, your wife's going to give birth to twin boys 3 months early. They're going to be in the NICU for 92 days. And on top of that, I'm going to give you cancer. And so it felt like this was my life. My destiny was to face adversity and come through it and inspire people and motivate people and show that you can achieve a whole lot with this type of mentality and attitude, and just being grateful. And that's what drives me every day.
Yeah, inspiring words there from Charlie Davies. And for those of you joining us on Spotify, we have Charlie Davies on This Is Fútbol. One thing I want to take you really quick back to, and something that you mentioned, just so that our listeners, and again, those listening on Spotify, can see how humble of a man Charlie Davies is. That brace you talked about at Boston College, our productions guy, got really, really deep in there. And we were told that you scored a chilena, bicycle kick against the Revolution in that game that you played with Boston College. So you don't have to be, super humble with us on this. You can let the listeners know that you shook Clinton Dempsey up with that bicycle kick. So, that trial in Ajax, like you said, led to that awesome contract for you to get started in your European career in Sweden. I know Nico has some questions for you on your European career. But I didn't want to let that note go by. Because that's huge. You scored a bicycle against the New England Revolution as a college player.
It gave me some confidence. I can tell you that.
Going back to that, I know that the league in the MLS, it has grown up to where you see a lot of players that have developed, that actually develop, and they make it quick to the first team in the MLS. We see it now with a few, for example, ourselves here in Miami. We see it with Benjamin Kramashi, that he's actually absolutely balling, and then we have another kid, David Reese, that he's playing. Now, from your own experience, would you tell a young player, if they have the chance to actually go overseas, to 100% take the chance, or nowadays it will be a little bit more different?
No, now you have a pathway from Major League Soccer to Europe. That was the case back in my day. They were forced with a decision to grow the league, and they relied on you to stay in the league. And you weren't going to be sold unless it was for an absurd amount of money, typically much more than your price tag should be. And so it was almost like you were held ransom. And that was the thought process back in the day. Do you go to MLS and knowing that there's a big chance that you're never going to leave, or do you take a chance and go to Europe, and if it does fall through and you don't get a contract, when you come back to MLS, your tail's between your legs, you're going to get a tenth of what you would have earned, right? You're going to get the lowest contract possible. And that's the risk that you take. Nowadays, you have a way to play in MLS, and the idea is to sell you. So you're not forced to go to Europe. And I think every kid is different. Every situation is different. If you're supremely talented and a top club wants you, they're going to bring you over into their academy, you're going to play, and then they're going to promote you to the first team, then it makes sense, right? If that's your pathway. But there's also pathways to go to Major League Soccer, to be in the city that you've grown up in, to get an opportunity to play as a 16 or 17, 18-year-old player with your MLS team, build 1, 2, 3 seasons, and then get sold. And that's the reality. That's the plan for you. If you continue to play. And I guess the argument is, one is a high pressure situation where you have to train like it's a World Cup every single week, and there's promotion and relegation, Europe attached to that, and that depends on how much time you're going to play versus MLS, where there is no promotion relegation, and you could play every single week. If they want, you're playing every single week, and that's it. Versus Europe, where there are a number of things at play. what's the plan of the sporting director and the head coach? Is the head coach there for 1 year, or does he get fired after you sign, or the sporting director or the technical director? And then you're lost, versus MLS, where more times than not, the sporting director is not changing, the technical director is not changing, and the head coach, you have a longer leash in MLS than you do in Europe. The demand is not the same. Although you saw today,
two of them.
One coach gets fired and then starts a chain reaction, and every club's looking at each other being like, oh, all right, well, then we're next. So that's the way the league has worked. And I think it's really a case-by-case basis.
I wanted to stick to your time in Europe because you played in a few countries. You played in Sweden, you played in France, and you also played in Netherlands, correct, in those leagues. There's been a lot of talk, I want to say, in the last, maybe 2 or 3 years about race, mainly in England and Italy. We saw, some stuff with Lukaku in Italy. Can you speak a little bit about, your time in those 3 countries and how, race played a part in those 3 countries? Was there ever any point where, you felt, I guess, discriminated upon, or where there was a game or something you were playing somewhere where you felt something? Can you talk a little bit about that?
So I played in Stockholm, Sweden. I played in Sochaux, France. I lived in a town called Belfort, and I played in Randers, Denmark. So those are the 3 places I lived, and I've never felt any racism towards me. I in any team I've played in every stadium, I never had an incident with racism. And that goes to European competition. We played in Kazan in Russia, and Europa League, and Portugal and Europa League at Braga. I've never had an incident of racism. Yet racism happens all over the world. It's not just in Italy or in England, where we've seen Lukaku and over the past couple of seasons have to deal with that. We're seeing Vinicius Jr. in Spain have to do that. So it's universal. There's a plague. It's an epidemic. It needs to be stopped, and the only way that it's going to be stopped is if real sanctions come down for incidents like this. And we've had the most recent one in MLS with Dante Van Zier and Red Bulls. And you just felt that the message didn't come down strong enough, because it's soccer for all. That's the typical feeling in Major League Soccer. Black Players for Change was created after the pandemic and George Floyd. You just felt that the league was going in a way that they were going to rule it out. Kick out racism. Not going to happen. You finally get that opportunity to make a statement, to make a real punishment. And I say the world's watching, because it was a newsworthy thing that happened. People in England, people in Belgium, where the player's from, were hearing about this. So the reaction from the league was going to be heard around the world. And you come with a 6-game suspension? Not 10, not 15, not 20, not a season ban, not kicked out of the league. 6 games? That's so underwhelming for me. And the club, the way they dealt with it. The manager who was fired today, Gerhard Struber, it was weak. There wasn't a real apology from him. I felt the sanctions should have been stronger. And that way you're sending a real message and signal. And then when we see it in Europe, when the fans do things that are a group of fans say things that are racist and detrimental to the game and to life, real sanctions with punishing them for finances. That's when you hurt their pocket, things change. Suspension of home fans for multiple games, 4, 5, 6 game ban of home fans. You think you're going to hear anything again from those fans? And
Yeah.
if one fan makes a comment, do you think the rest of the fans around that fan are going to say something? Are they going to boot him out? That's when you have real action
And the major issue, though, if you really think about it, are like we call in South America, los barra bravas, which are the guys that are the hooligans, I guess you could say. But those are the guys who are paid by the team to go to the games, who are the ones that cause the trouble. So it's almost like a circle effect here. It's almost like the teams, need to, put their foot down, as well as the leagues need to put their foot down. And they just have to get these people who are causing these issues in football just out of the game, because it's just super negative, and it's just not necessary. It's just not necessary. And I back you 100%. 6 games is ridiculous. I think he should have been suspended for the rest of the year. I think that would have been a good
strong message
punishment, or even just taking him out of the league. Just hey, no one void his contract. We're not going to have that here.
Or the league doesn't step in, and the club says, we don't tolerate that. You will not suit up for our club again, right?
Absolutely.
What message would that send? You don't even have to have the league to intervene, right? When the club itself says you're out, that's a line you don't cross. You don't come back from that. At our club, you can go and take classes and educate yourself, but at our club, you don't cross that line. And make that a statement before any player signs a contract at your club. If there's any incidents of racism, homophobic, or anti-Semitic, you are gone. Done.
Put it in the contract. Put it in the contract.
And
that's it.
I think that would be something that would start to make significant changes in the game.
Yeah, definitely. I want to take you to your time, and I know we're a little bit over time. We're almost out here. We don't want to bother you too much and take all of your time. Take your time to when you played in the national team. I know that this specific generation, a lot of people call it the golden generation because of all the players that we have overseas. However, you guys, when you played, particularly in 2009, you got to a tournament, a Confederations Cup, and exceeded expectations. I want to ask you that. How was it? Did you guys expect to go that far into the into the groups and make it to a final against Brazil?
Nico, hell no. Are you crazy? I think we were all going into the Confederations Cup like, this is a cool experience. Let's see how far we can go. Let's play our best. But there were no expectations. Our group was Italy, Brazil, and Egypt. You were going into it saying, we hope we can match up against Egypt, get a result against Egypt, realistically. But after the first game, we lose to Italy 3-1, and Giuseppe Rossi, who could have played for the United States, chose to play for Italy, and he obviously scores 2 goals in that game. We're like, oh man, that hurts. And then Brazil completely smacked us up 2-0. So think about that. We've given up 5 goals and we've scored 1 in the Confederations Cup that so far. Now we're going into the Egypt game, and me as a young player, I got to come in as a substitute. I think I was the first substitute in the game against Italy. I had 1 chance. It was off a corner. Landon hit an in-swinger. I was at the 6. I headed it. All I could see was Gigi Buffon in goal, and I thought, oh my God, I'm going to score this. And I psyched myself out, and I got under it and headed the ball over the goal, and I was just like, oh my God, that was my 1 chance. So I didn't play at all against Brazil, and I figured in this training session before the Egypt game, I knew it was like a 1 full session. Let me have the training of my life. Let me try and get a start in this Egypt game, or at least get minutes. Let me show Bob Bradley I'm hungry. And I had the training of my life. I mean, I could have been Lionel Messi in this training. I could have been Cristiano Ronaldo. I played the best of my life. I remember it vividly because whatever I touched, we were playing small-sided, and I think I scored every time I touched the ball or assisted. It was, no one could get the ball off my foot. Next thing you know, Bob Bradley says, we're only making 2 changes for this game. In goal, Brad Guzan, you're going in. Tim Howard, you're going to take a to rest. And I'm like, oh, well, I'm not going to be the next. And he's like, Charlie Davies, you're going up top with Josie. And that's all I needed. And from that moment, I just played with confidence. I said, I'm going to worry about the way I play and not worry about how people want me to play. and I just, it all clicked, and I played like I'd played with them, that group, for years, and people knew how to play with me. They knew how to find me into the channels, and I made the right runs, and the timing was there, and Josie and I really clicked, and that's when that partnership started to come together. And so when we beat Egypt 3-0 and we move on to the next round, that's a miracle. That is absolute miracle. So Brazil beats Italy 3-0. We beat Egypt 3-0. Now we go through, and now we're playing Spain. Spain hadn't lost in 2 years, and this is their golden generation. No one expected us to win. No one expected us to get out of the group. So here we are playing Spain on my birthday, and Michael Jackson passed away on that day as well. And we come in, Bob Bradley told Josie and I, as the two strikers, to come back on Xabi Alonso and Xavi. We're going to force their back line to try and beat us with passes. We're going to try and shut them down. Don't let them build out of the midfield. I did everything I could in my absolute power, with every athletic bone in my body, to take the ball off Xavi's feet. And I tell you what, I didn't even come close. He is magic. I could not believe how aware he is of space, and his first touch is just incredible, just platinum. And we just ended up beating them. We had such a good game plan. They weren't. I don't think they were necessarily ready for our athleticism and the way we were ready to grind. And we capitalized on the skill that we had. I think the first goal came off of a throw in. I play a 1-2 with Clint. Clint then plays Josie Altidore. Josie bodies his teammate Capdevila at Villarreal, scores that first goal. That gives us another boost, saying, hey, we can do this. And I think Spain was like, whoa, what the hell just happened? And then we just had to defend. We just said, we're gonna go into a real American work-like mentality and just defend. We're grinding this out. We're gonna outwork them, and we're gonna come together. The only way we're gonna beat Spain is if we play together as a unit, defend as a unit, every single player. And we did that. And then Clint gets a very fortuitous goal. Just Sergio Ramos takes a touch in his own 6. I don't know what he was thinking, and Clint just snuck around and shot it one time to put us up, and we beat Spain 2-0. So after that, we go into the final against Brazil. It's a dream to ever play in a FIFA final, a tournament final against Brazil. There's not a better opponent ever. It's a dream. Right now, we're all like in fantasy world, and we go up 2-0 at half. We go into the locker room. I think we're all like, we can win a World Cup. It's possible. That's literally what crossed my mind. And I know you're still in the game. You're thinking about the second half, but you would be foolish not to think at that moment, we're up 2-0 at half. We just beat Spain. We beat Egypt 3-0. That, whoa, guys, this is for real. We can win a World Cup. We're playing with the absolute world's best. And we're showing that we have quality. We're not just running around and kicking and defending. We have quality, real quality, and we can hurt teams, any team in the world, on the counter. That's for damn sure. So we ended up losing that game because Brazil is Brazil, and Luis Fabiano and Kaká, they came alive. And if Dani Alves is a substitute and you have Mike Cohn and Dani Alves on the wings, good luck. So I just think that moment really gave our country a sense of belief that actually we're not that far off. We really aren't. If tactically the team's in sync, we do have the quality to win games. We do have the quality to beat the world's best.
And I want to, before we let you go, I want to ask you 2 quick questions. One is going to be a killer here. I'm interested in, of all the defenders you played against, who was the one defender that you would look at the calendar and be like, holy shit, I don't want to play that guy. That guy is going to just kick my ankles all game, grab my shirt, grab my butt. You know, he's just going to try to get in my brain. Who was that guy?
Well, I would say there's not a defender that I was scared of. There's a defender that I really appreciated the battle, the mental battle. I knew never easy, and there's always going to be a back and forth, but you love the challenge, and that would be Carlos Puyol. That he was a defender that would hit you off the ball. He'd kick you. He's yelling at you. He's pinching you. He's pushing you. He's doing anything he can. And the more he did it, the more I knew I was in his head. The more I knew he thought he'd have to get me off my game mentally because I was bringing it, and he was scared of what I can do. And so I was feeding off it. But that battle, physically and mentally and tactically, and having to have the best first touch, I won a couple of aerial duels versus him. I'm like, I can do this. So I would, if I could play a match every day and I could pick one defender, that's the defender I'd want to play against. I would want that challenge every single match, because that's what all athletes, I think, hope for, is playing a respectful duel, one that is you got to give 110% to win. And it's a lot of it's a chess match, because you got to use your mind and your body, and for it to all work to get the best of the duel. That's the epitome of success. That's the duel I want, is Carlos, a matchup versus Carlos Puyol.
Absolutely, a hell of a player and definitely a legend. And
a great guy too,
off
the field.
Absolutely.
That's exactly how he seemed. He seemed like he's two different characters, one on the pitch and one off the pitch.
Yeah.
One that you love as a teammate, one that you hate to play against.
Yeah, I got to share a couple of times with him, because he actually is in the media as well. A little bit, not so much, he's part-time, but he's a great guy off the field.
That's good to
hear. Just to wrap it up, and again, we're here with Charlie Davies, who, Nico, the more and more we talk to him, I'm starting to think that Ted Lasso was written after Charlie Davies, because every question is believe. I love it. I'm going to the Heat game after this, and I'm just more inspired to go to the Heat game, because I'm ready to go. So just to wrap it up, and thank you again for your time, Charlie. It's been absolutely amazing. But I want to get your opinion. 2026, the World Cup is in the U.S.
Mm-hmm.
The U.S. has a lot of great young players, a lot of great, even more young players that are underneath in that U20 team coming up. What do you see, or what would be a positive outcome in your eyes for the U.S. in that World Cup?
Get to a semifinals.
Whoa!
There's no doubt in my mind that the team can get to a semifinals. In this past World Cup, think of how many inexperienced players came into this tournament, and you're playing against Wales, Iran, and England to get out of that group and then play the Netherlands, which I think they still could have beat had they been not tactically naive and in the selection a bit better. That's now, 4 years from now, with a group that's mostly playing in Europe. Why wouldn't you get to a semifinals? That should be the expectation and the push. And that's why I think the next hire for the U.S. men's national team manager is so important. Who are they going to select to get the most out of this group? Who are they going to select to expand on the football the U.S. men's national team can play? Because it can't be just one way. You can't play the same way you do against an El Salvador or Honduras, no disrespect to those nations, versus a Brazil, a Argentina, a Germany, a France. You have to be able to be tactically adept and be able to adjust in that type of environment. And which manager can have a real pathway to getting this group a real vision and understanding of how to do it? It's one thing to say that's the goal, but how do you do it? And how do you show that to not only the team, but to America? And then America just getting behind this team. Let's get behind and support this group and just give them the most support that they possibly can have to push them over the line. Because we saw in 2002, South Korea, the fans, they had quality, but the fans, the atmosphere pushed them over the line. It was almost like you walked into Azteca at Azteca at its peak, 110,000 people. When you were there, you felt that pressure, and in a lot of cases, it suffocated players. There are a few players that could play through it, but the majority, they suffered. One, they couldn't breathe, and two, just that pressure on top of you, it can be debilitating. And so I want Americans to come together for that 2026 World Cup and to put that pressure on everyone who steps onto the pitch to play against the U.S. And I think it's going to be a magical environment and a magical time in our country where football takes another leap forward, and people are all like, I want my kids to play that sport because that's the world's game. That's what it did for me in 1994, and I have the same hopes and expectations for the next generation after watching 2026.
Absolutely, absolutely, fantastic answer. And if Matt Crocker, if you're listening, if you need somebody to give an inspirational speech, to those boys in there, Charlie Davies is your man, because, like I'm saying, I'm feeding with the inspiration right now.
Vamos!
I'm ready to go to the arena right now, and I still got to work another 3 hours. So.
Well, have fun at the arena. Hopefully, it's the Celtics. The Celtics you're playing in the next round.
No, I hope so too.
That's not what Danny's hoping for, but
no, I do. I hope so, because then I can make a lot of money off my tickets. But
there you go.
Before we let you go, Charlie, from my end, I wanted to ask you one last question. There's been a lot of rumors that special player, that best player in the world, might be coming to the MLS. I wanted to know, what's your take on Messi arriving into the MLS? What would it represent?
It would be incredible. It would be just like David Beckham when he came to the States to play in MLS. We're talking about the greatest player of all time. This is a player who took the general sports fan after this past World Cup and made them a soccer fan, a Messi fan. The interest peaked in America after the World Cup because of that battle between Mbappe and Messi. And every kid I go to that I'm around in any type of soccer environment, they always go, Charlie, Messi or Mbappe? That is the type of player you would be bringing to this country, where all kids and adults will be flocking to these stadiums to see Lionel Messi in person, to get a glimpse of the greatest player to ever play the game, a player that's played in all these competitions and won every trophy known to man. It would be a massive signing, a generational signing for Major League Soccer. And think about all the eyeballs that come into this league, all the South Americans that'll say, I can go to Major League Soccer. That's a real pathway, because you're already seeing a ton of players from the Argentine League and Boca and River, Colombia, Paraguay, coming to the States to play Major League Soccer, knowing that they can use that as a stepping stone to eventually get to Europe if that's the pathway. But the level of life to live in the States is just it's amazing, and the opportunity for their children. So it's just a great place to play. And it's only going to make the league that much more important, that much bigger. Obviously, everyone's hoping. We're all fingers crossed that's his decision he makes, because the sooner the better. You want Lionel Messi while he still has some gas in the tank, and can still have an impact on the pitch, because this league's a very difficult league. It's a very athletic league. A lot of pace and helter skelter sometimes, and if you don't have the right team around Lionel Messi, it could get overwhelming for a player of his caliber and his level. So I really hope he comes to the league. I think it would be incredible. It would for my kids to even go, Lionel Messi's in MLS. Dad, we got to get to the game. Like, let's go already. Come on.
Well, if he gets here, he's coming to Inter Miami. So when he gets down here, you can bring your kids, and we'll see you at the stadium, and we'll get together and have a conversation out there.
Fantastic.
But, I want to thank you so much, Charlie, for coming on. It's been unbelievable. Like I said, you've absolutely inspired me, and before in more ways than one before this conversation. So it's been awesome. Thank you for coming on. We hope to have you on again, and. Thank you so much again. Appreciate it. Have a good one, and let's go USA, baby.
Let's go.